Welcome to High Infidelity, the best cheating videos on YouTube. If you enjoy this content, remember to subscribe and turn on notifications. Now let's get into the video.
I think I cheated. My ex-boyfriend and I have been attempting to reconcile. I told him the last time we spoke that I didn't want to be reattached if he couldn't understand all the ways he damaged me. He didn't read the texts the night I'm going to discuss. My buddy threw a housewarming celebration for her new residence that night. We kept it small, with only two of her buddies I'd only met once before. We all got incredibly drunk and euphoric as a result. At the end of the night, one person departed with just a drink, but the other guy was intoxicated, and I didn't want him driving drunk. I was also concerned that he might lose his license. In retrospect, I should not have cared. So I told him he either take a cab or sleep on one of the sofas while I slept on another. So I was resting on the floor watching a movie, trying to calm down, when he attempted to make a move on me. I instantly got up and moved, telling him that I was working on things with my ex. I began to drink more since it was assisting me in coming down from a high. Later on, he persisted in his efforts. I continued shouting no many times more, but then we were kissing, and I let it happen. We kissed for a while, and he stated he couldn't get hard because he was too inebriated. I told him I didn't want to and asked him to stop. He then informed me he was going to fetch a medication and would return. I told them not to bother coming back. In any case, he did. When I informed him we weren't going to have, he attempted to make me feel horrible since he had already taken the pill. But I told him I'd already told him I didn't want to do it. I slept off on the sofa and awoke to find him nude and stripping off my clothing. He then implanted himself into me for 3 to 4 minutes before I recognized what was going on and shoved him away. I was so taken aback that I don't recall what occurred afterwards. Just that he went to sleep, and I haven't been able to sleep well for days, makes me believe I cheated by allowing him to make out with me. I think I was pressured, and my repeated efforts to say no were disregarded, so I just gave in. But that's the issue, I caved. And since I let him do it, he became more forceful. I wish I had done more to advocate for myself. But I knew I'd cheated the moment I let him kiss me. Story 2. The long sad history of how I met the best person in my life and lost her. Please keep in mind that this is a lengthy and unpleasant narrative. I'm 39 years old and have been married twice. Both of those marriages were, to put it mildly, abysmal. I was young and foolish the first time, and I didn't know much about life. I'd moved to the United States, met a lady a few years my senior, and instantly fell in love with her since it was my first serious relationship. I realized I truly wanted to remain here, so I married her since I felt we were meant to be. I was probably 19 or 20 at the time, but I can't recall. She soon began verbally and emotionally abusing me, as well as sleeping with other men and women. All of her intentions for correctly filing the immigration papers were put on hold, and she eventually decided she didn't want to do it anymore. Finally, our roommate booted her out, and she vanished from my life. That was my first experience with a genuine relationship. There was a brief affair with a female around that time, but nothing came of it. I don't have anything awful to say about her, we simply lived too far apart for it to work. After a few years, I meet another lady via common acquaintances. I was lonely and plunged into the connection right away. I thought I loved her at first, but then she cheated on me. And continued to deceive. Over and over again. But since I was so dependent on her, I couldn't get out of the situation. Her mother eventually persuaded us into marrying, which was more worse than before. Never-ending verbal and emotional abuse, as well as her cheating on me with a slew of guys. To be honest, she wasn't really very gorgeous, I suppose she was simply easygoing and would attract guys that way. Those 7 years made me feel like I already had one foot in the grave. I felt as if I had lost all hope in life. Finally, she wanted to relocate to a different section of town, although I did not. I finally had my belongings in order to be able to afford an apartment on my own, so we parted ways. The divorce occurred a few years later, and it was unremarkable. I met a female via common acquaintances around the time of our divorce. I wasn't very interested in her, but she chased me relentlessly. I was lonely, so having a barely legal female aggressively seeking my attention and love was really nice. I felt as though I still had worth in life, and that life wasn't quite so dreary and over. As I should have expected, she merely used me for money and stuff for a time, then began seeing someone else on the side. Neither of us found out until much later, then broke up with me and relocated. After that, there wasn't much for a long time. I had a brief flirtation with another lady. I liked her, but it wasn't going to work out, so it didn't last. My 3 longest relationships had all been disastrous by that time. I'd been verbally, emotionally, and financially abused, humiliated, and repeatedly cheated on. Almost certainly a good 10 years of that total. After a few years, I met a lady online. Beautiful, intelligent, ambitious, and full of life. I'm completely out of my league. I had love at first sight the first time we met in person, something I had never experienced before. More than that, as I watched her stroll down the hotel corridor, I thought to myself, I want her to be my wife. I know it's odd, coming from 2 failed marriages, but I finally met someone I wanted to marry because of her, not because I had to or was forced to. This time, it would be out of pure love and a desire to have a family. We were together for almost 5 years. There was always a reason why we hadn't married yet. I was afraid, I didn't have the money, I needed to complete my graduate degree. But that never came to pass. She was the nicest, kindest, most gorgeous lady I'd ever met. Nobody had ever treated me so kindly before. She worked part-time, cooked, cleaned, and did the whole ideal housewife thing. I didn't care for any of it. What exactly did I do? I pushed her aside. I denied her love, attention, approval, and everything else she required. Her spirits were absolutely destroyed by me. Not because there was anything wrong with her, rather, I was so messed up from all the past destructive relationships that I believe I wrecked it. After all, someone was meant to be suffering, and it wasn't me this time, so I mistreated her irresponsibly. I annihilated the most beautiful angel that had ever graced my life. On top of that, I ended up committing online adultery, which began with porn, which was okay, and progressed to sharing photos and videos with women online. I'm not sure how I didn't see I was cheating right away, but I knew it was bad. She suffered a mental breakdown when she discovered the infidelity after 3.5 years of negligent care. She had absolutely lost her mind. And who can blame her? Here was a guy she adored, from whom all she wanted was affection, and he'd robbed her of it for 3.5 years while also cheating on her. Her trust in mankind was entirely broken as a result of this. She was unable to depart due to financial constraints. She was trapped living with me, the jerk who had treated her so badly. Only then did I understand how awful things had gone, and I attempted to atone for my transgressions. But she was so sad and distraught that nothing could heal her. A few months later, we had a late-night dispute over my phone, with her believing I'm cheating on her again. We trip as we scramble for the phone. I catch myself on the edge of a desk, and she falls heavily and strikes her head. She had a severe concussion and totally lost control of her rage. Because I felt insecure, I panicked and went downstairs. When I heard her smashing stuff, I contacted the police because I believed she'd gone insane. They just instructed me to spend the night at a motel. I should not have been such a wimp. I should have checked on her and determined the severity of her concussion so that I could have rushed her to the emergency hospital. But instead, I spent the night in a motel, despite the fact that she had contacted me and said she had no clue what had occurred or where I was. I assumed it was some sort of crazy hallucination or falsehood on her side, while the fact was that she had amnesia. Her concussion left her with long-term rage issues. If she was already enraged and furious over the adultery and abuse, her rage rose tenfold. We had so many shouting battles that I had to depart for the motel many times. But we were stuck in that scenario for over a year and a half, with her feeling imprisoned and me trying to do whatever I could to make up for hurting her and get her to calm down. We got into another large late-night argument in early January, and I believe we both lost our wits. Not violent, just out of control rage and ranting. I had to return to the motel. The following day, she brought me clothing from the hotel and informed me that she was leaving the next day. The last time I saw her in person was 4 weeks ago. We communicated occasionally after she left and were doing really well for a time, even talking about renting a house near to her hometown together. Then, on Wednesday night, while narrating a tale, I said something unwittingly insensitive, and she became enraged. After hours of rage, she told me she was breaking up with me. We've only spoken a few times since then, the most recent being an hours-long heart-to-heart open emotions discussion on Sunday night, when I felt like I was finally able to truly open up to take responsibility for how much I hurt her, and I hope she recognized my sincerity. The next time we spoke was yesterday night, when she was enraged over everything I'd done and continued telling me how much she despises me until she tired herself out. I told her that we had just spoken about relocating together and becoming the doctor and doctor's wife in a tiny town the week before. It sounded like a fantastic dream. She said I wrecked it because I kept messing up. I awoke this morning to a missed call from her in the middle of the night, as well as a link to a charming Good Morning TikTok movie. We had a strange talk for approximately 30 minutes, and then, that was all. She subsequently informed me that she had received something in the mail, but we didn't discuss it more. I still adore her, and I've longed and prayed that I could somehow stop screwing up and receive a second shot with her. None of my previous breakups had affected me as much, perhaps because I was relieved to be free of them. This time, it has completely torn my heart out. I've only put in a few hours of work in the past several weeks since I can't concentrate. I'm surprised they haven't noticed. So there you have it, the lengthy, ugly narrative of how, after 3 violent relationships, I wrecked a relationship with the one person who actually loved me and treated me properly. She was like a Disney princess. I'm not exaggerating when I say she was stunning, and she loved to sing, dance, and play with the animals. I had the potential to make a real-life princess my bride, but I squandered it all and deeply wounded her. It wasn't until I started counseling and antidepressants, as well as reading books on trauma that my therapist recommended, that I realized how profoundly I had harmed her. I have vivid recollections of occasions when she tried to be lovely and wanted to be loved, and I pushed her away. I sobbed a lot after learning how much anguish I'd given her. My only dream is that I could still make apologies, give her the ring, family, and house she desired, and spend the rest of my life demonstrating how much she means to me and how valuable she is. But I damaged it by turning into a monster. I despise myself for being that, and I despise myself much more for causing her so much pain. She was my guardian angel. I wish I could hear her sing joyous tunes to our pets once again. This is my worst regret, and I believe I will regret it for the rest of my life. Thank you for reading all the way to the end. And if anybody wants to remark, criticize, or otherwise express themselves, please do so. This weighs so heavy on my heart that I'm not sure how I go through the day.